Okay, a big part of the sound editing job is, in addition to the things we've discussed, is music. Okay, music is a big deal. It can make or break a film. It can change the tone. It can ruin a film, as well as bring it to life. My advice, in the long run, let's hope you get on some projects where you have a composer who's composing for your piece. That is the ideal situation because the music is written in conjunction with the filmmaker for the scene specifically, and it's made to fit. Uh, it may be a while before you are regularly able to work with a composer, in which case you're going to be either, working with a sound library or maybe like GarageBand making your own loops, which is totally cool as well. My advice in any of these cases is keep it simple. Keep it simple. Even in a feature length film, we don't want too many competing themes going on. The great composers of the great soundtracks, have a handful of themes that we associate with specific characters and locations and activities, and they stick to those. And I suggest you try to do the same thing too. So, like when we're editing this market scene, uh, don't introduce four different songs for a short 5-minute sequence. Like maybe a song, maybe two, maybe one song that has two distinct, like a chorus and the verse are distinct in this song. But keep it simple. um, Try to not introduce drastically different songs. It's real trouble. I also would say if you can get away without using music, don't use music. If the scene works on its own and you don't have a composer to specifically score something for you, maybe you don't need music. Bringing in music sometimes can create more problems, not just for the way the film is viewed by the audience, but also now you need to worry about copyright issues and paying, rights and, editing the song and loops. And so music isn't necessarily always a good thing. I also think it's really important to know your genre before you're bringing in your music. Certain types of music are more appropriate for different genres. Certain genres, you can get away with a ton of stuff. Like horror is a very fun genre to edit because you can get away not only with really, dramatic, over the top music, but you can get away with little musical stings and, shock scare, orchestral little little things like that you can't in all genres. So, be aware of what you're dealing with, the tone and style of your film. That one approach to music doesn't apply to every film. Don't fall in love with a temp music track. In fact, I would suggest don't even use them. If you know you will never be able to afford the rights to a Post Malone song for your short film, don't use the Post Malone song temporarily to cut your montage. You're never going to like anything else as much as you like that song. So from the beginning, you need to, and this goes for, this is really before the editing process even begins. You need to start contacting composers or going through sound libraries online and pulling tracks so that when you start editing, you don't have to sort of stall out, go look for music for a day and come back. All right, here, I'm ready to cut the music into this montage scene. Here are the songs, that I've already pulled. Let's try some out. It's much better to cut from music that you actually may have a chance at using than using stuff you're never going to get. And there is very reasonable free sound and music out there online that you can get access to. There's also reasonably priced stuff that you can pay for through sound libraries. So there are student rates, there are film festival rates. There are things that you can, pay as you go. So don't feel like it's, over the top expensive to get pretty good music. Go out there online. It's just like getting stock footage. You're just getting a sound library instead. Now here's another important thing. If the scene doesn't work without music, it probably isn't going to work with music either. Don't try to fix your scene with music. Fix it first. It should play. It should get across, the important information and emotional beats without the music. The music should just be maybe highlighting what you're trying to do. It's not, nobody ever saved a scene through music. Okay, so using a song. So let me grab this song here and just talk about some things. Um, so, so let's say you pulled a song from a music library and you need to use it in whatever the video is you're going to use, and there it is. Um, and the most basic sort of situation you first run into is, well, my video is, or my scene is shorter than the entire song. So I'm going to start my scene here at the beginning, and the beginning is going to sound awesome, and then my scene ends about here, but the music doesn't. Okay, so I'm going to put a fade out, and we're going to fade it out right there. Okay, and I'll do one of these this time. Boop, boop. My little 3-frame is pretty small these days. I'm going to change that back. That was a good idea when I was doing the dialogue stuff, but now it's a bit short. So we'll add a little fade. It's fine, right? It's fine. Sometimes it'll work. If for whatever reason in my film or in my video, I've got a reason to hang in black or something and have it fade out, then this is no problem. But more often than not, what I've found, particularly I remember in commercial work when you're cutting like 30-second spots and things like that, it's often stronger to have a song's natural ending and fade in rather than have the song naturally begin and fade out. So oftentimes what I would find is it's going to be better for me to have this song end the way the musician intended, which was a proper ending with proper fade out, and rather than and then have the fade in occur at the beginning. And this time I'll do it with keyframes. Boop. Dunk. And that's just simply because in many scenes, or certainly commercials, the audience isn't totally engaged. They don't know what is going on in with this scene yet. They're figuring out what's happening. Where at the beginning of the scene, and they're a little less attentive and critical of the music than they are at the end, where everything's coming together for this scene. Our beats are happening, and we're putting closure on this scene. And a fade out often doesn't work really well, and the natural song is oftentimes better. Now, another option, of course, is if you have the rights, is to edit the song. And this depends on, let's say you got this from a sound library. This depends on the rights you have from the sound library. Like, for example, if you go out on Creative Commons, a Creative Commons license from a composer may say, you can use this song, edit it, do anything you want, as long as you give me credit at the end. But some of the composers will say, look, you can use my song for free, as long as you give me credit, but you can't edit my song. But let's say in this situation, the composer's fine with it. This happens to be a song from Bob Dylan, and I don't have the rights to the song. He's certainly not okay with it. But for our demonstration, we're going to use this. And basically what we're talking about is, well, what if we could edit this song? And sometimes this is very easily done. And in fact, this song is probably a good example, just looking at the waveforms, because it has these big musical breaks here where the music essentially stops. So I probably could shorten this song simply by taking out that middle, pulling those together, And now I've got a song that's a third shorter, and let's hear how it sounds. Pretty close, not quite right. This is when we go into trim mode, right? Remember trim mode? We get into trim mode, and then we get it looping. I think we actually maybe need a little more on both ends. So I'm going to first add a few frames to the left side, add a few frames to the right side, and let's listen again. Here's what I think we're going to do. We're going to do the old-fashioned technique and see if we can cut out, if we can actually hang on this one longer, right up until this first beat is about to start. And waveforms are super useful here. I should be able to see, there's that waveform. So let me zoom in here. So I want to stay on this. So you see that? That's the beat. So I really want to cut right about there. And I want to cut to right about, let's see. So let's see if I can put this right there. And let's zoom out. Pretty good. Let's see if a crossfade helps. Pretty good, okay? And that's how you edit music. Now, granted, this was a pretty easy example, because the song had a sort of natural break where we could do that. It's much more difficult, but still sometimes doable to make a cut, right in the middle of a song. But it's totally doable, and the same approach applies. You're going to get in there, you're going to look at those waveforms, you're going to count beats. If you've played around with GarageBand and made your own beats or things, this is, maybe you have a head start on this, because you're going to look at these waveforms and you're basically going to, you need to cut out the same amount of beats, so that it matches musically. And you're going to just do the same thing that I just did and slice a little here, move it together, use the trim tool, add a crossfade, and that's how you can edit music. Now, another technique you can use is, let's say we're in this situation where, hey, I love the beginning of this song and I want it in my scene. It's too important. It's more important than the ending. And in fact, I don't want that ending. There is this really cool technique that I use fairly frequently. That's basically, it's a reverb ring out. And what you do essentially is you find a point in the song where you just want it to fade out, but there's no fade. So example, let's listen here. Let's say I wanted the song to end there, but I wanted it to sort of reverb out, so there was a little echo to it. There's a really cool trick where basically you duplicate that final sound, you nest it in a new sequence, and then you add reverb to that and you stretch it out. It's really cool, and it's called a reverb ring out. And actually, instead of me showing you how to do it here, I have on Moodle an awesome tutorial by a YouTuber called Premiere Gal, I think is her name. Anyway, she's got 5 or 6 cool audio tricks that she teaches in this little tutorial. The second trick is what I'm talking about here. Go check her out. You can just jump straight to the second trick and see the ring out, but I think you're going to want to see some of these other things she does. She does she plays with pitch. She does some other cool tricks that are definitely worth checking out. So make sure you check that out on Moodle. The ring out is another trick you can pull where you want to, end a song, or to be honest, it could even be dialogue or a sound effect. It doesn't matter, but you want it to end, but you want it to sort of echo out. One final thing when talking about audio, bringing in sound effects or music, you've got to bring in the high quality stuff, right? Maybe for a temp something, You just, rip something off YouTube and bring it in, and it's an MP3 or something like that. But long term, you need to find good, high quality sources that have, wave files or AAC that are, 48, 16-bit stereo good stuff. Because the quality of the MP3s or things you just pull offline aren't gonna cut it. Okay, just a few concepts before we move off of sound editing. Um, One thing when you're doing sound editing is you can sometimes get a little out of control with your sound effects and have too many things going on. Something to keep in mind is that if someone in the scene is not listening to the sound effect that's going on, the audience isn't going to be listening either. So, if there's dialogue going on and you're doing, the audience is intended to follow the dialogue, but you're doing this intricate, sound design of, a cuckoo clock going off in the background, that's probably going to be distracting and unnecessary work. Okay? So if the audience is, focused with their eyes on the actors talking, they're not going to be focused on, whether this phone is ringing or something like that. So keep that in mind to keep things from being too busy. Uh, Put in your sound effects when the audience needs that information and wants that information, not when it's competing. Now, the flip side of that is that if you have moments in your film of sort of ambiguity or mystery, like I don't have a great shot here, maybe in the beginning, something that where we're not clear what to look at or what's going on. A good example is, like in a film with lots of shadow, or darkness in the frame. If there was, a character, we see half their face, but it's covered in mystery. Those are opportunities where if the audience is lacking information here because things are ambiguous or unclear, they're going to be drawn to their ears even more. And this is an opportunity to direct the audience through sound because they're going to be craving it in those moments. And filmmakers like David Lynch are really fantastic at doing this, putting you in these weird situations where you can't exactly tell what's going on visually, and then you're paying attention to these interesting sounds going on in the sound design. So keep that in mind, that complex sound design that requires a lot of audience attention can be great, but it's often best coupled with an image that isn't very demanding. And then finally, let's talk a little merch and what we've been reading about. Merch is the king of sound designers. In fact, he's even more famous for that than he is for his picture editing. And in the book, right, he talks about Apocalypse Now and how he at a certain point realized that he's editing together these Apocalypse Now scenes with dozens and dozens of helicopters, landing on the beach, and he's putting in dozens and dozens of helicopter sound effects into the sound design, and it starts to just be too much and too busy, and he started to take them away, and he recognized that at a certain point, the audience can't perceive the difference between, 3 helicopters and 10 helicopters. And he realized, once you get to a certain number, it's diminishing returns. Now, you guys are probably not about to be editing together, massive helicopter chase sequences, but you are going to be editing together maybe crowd noise or traffic or something like that. And I just want you to recognize that there are limits to the value of adding more and more and more and more sound effects down here. If you get beyond maybe 3 car horns honking, the audience can't tell the difference. So you're probably good with just those 3, and you can move on from there. So that's one of those merch lessons out of the book.